Why $1,618 a month could make you a millionaire. You're running numbers on retirement calculators trying to figure out what it would actually take to become a millionaire through investing, and you're getting wildly different answers depending on what you input. Some calculators say you need to invest $3,000 a month. Others say $1,000 is enough if you start early enough. The timeframes range from 15 years to 40 years. And you're sitting there thinking, can someone just tell me the actual realistic number I need to hit to reach seven figures? Here's what's interesting. There is a specific number, and it's not round, and it's not what most financial content claims. It's $1,618 per month. Not $1,500. Not $1,600. Exactly $1,618. And that specificity isn't arbitrary. It comes from the actual mathematics of compound growth at market average returns over a realistic investing timeline for most working professionals. My name is Jack, and I spend way too much time reverse engineering wealth milestones, working backward from goals like Millionaire to figure out exactly what monthly investment amount gets you there under realistic assumptions. Because I think most financial advice gives you either oversimplified rules of thumb or impossibly complex scenarios when what people actually want is a clear, specific target they can work toward. And what I've discovered is that $1,618 monthly is the magic number for most people. Not the only path to $1 million, but the most realistic, achievable path for someone with a middle class to upper middle class income who starts investing in their late 20s or early 30s. Because here's what makes $1,618 special. It's high enough that compound interest can actually work its magic over a reasonable time frame, but it's low enough that someone making $75,000 to $100,000 can actually achieve it with discipline. It's the Goldilocks number. Not too high to be fantasy, not too low to take forever, but just right to get you to millionaire status while you're still young enough to enjoy it. So if you've been wondering what it actually takes to join the Millionaire Club, or if you want a specific target to work toward instead of vague advice about saving more, or if you're curious about whether this goal is even realistic for someone with your income, this is for you. Because understanding why $1,618 matters might completely change how you think about your financial future. The 20-year math that changes everything. Let's start with the core calculation that makes $1,618 the magic number, because understanding the math makes it feel less arbitrary and more achievable. If you invest $1,618 per month for 20 years in a diversified portfolio averaging 8% annual returns, which is conservative based on historical S&P 500 performance, you end up with approximately $1,003,000. $1,003,000. You contributed $388,320 of your own money over those 2 decades. The market generated $614,680 through compound growth. Your returns exceeded your contributions by over 50%. That's the power of compound interest finally kicking into high gear. Now, why 20 years specifically? Because 20 years is a realistic investing timeline for someone who gets serious about wealth building in their late 20s or early 30s. Start at 30, you hit millionaire at 50. Start at 35, you're there at 55. These are ages where being a millionaire actually matters. You still have decades of life ahead, you're hitting your peak earning years, and you've got the capital base to either coast into retirement or accelerate even further. Compare this to the lower numbers you often hear. If you invest $1,000 a month at the same 8% returns, you hit $1 million in about 26 years. That's 6 more years. The difference between reaching millionaire at 50 versus 56. And in those 6 years, you missed out on enormous compound growth if you'd been investing at the higher rate. Or look at higher amounts. Investing $2,000 monthly gets you to $1 million in about 18 years. That's great. But for someone making $80,000, saving $2,000 monthly is genuinely difficult without extreme lifestyle sacrifice. The math works, but the behavior doesn't for most people. $1,618 is the sweet spot. Aggressive enough to get you there in a reasonable time frame, but achievable enough that many middle-income earners can actually hit it with intentional lifestyle design. It's the number where the math and the behavior align. I ran these calculations for myself at age 32 when I was making about $85,000. $1,618 monthly felt like a stretch, but not impossible. I'd need to be disciplined, resist lifestyle inflation, make some trade-offs. But I could do it. And seeing that clear path to millionaire by 52 was the motivation I needed to actually commit. The income threshold that makes this realistic. So here's the practical question. What kind of income do you need to invest $1,618 per month? And is that even achievable for most people? $1,618 per month is $19,416 per year. To invest that amount while covering living expenses, you probably need a gross household income between $85,000 and $110,000 depending on your location and lifestyle. At $85,000, you're investing about 23% of your gross income, which is aggressive but doable. At $110,000, it's about 18%, which is very manageable. Now, the median household income in the US is around $75,000, so $1,618 monthly isn't achievable for the median household without significant lifestyle optimization or dual incomes. But it is achievable for dual income households where each partner makes $45,000 to $55,000. Single professionals in fields like tech, healthcare, engineering, finance, sales who've advanced beyond entry level. Anyone who's been working for 7 to 10 years and has progressed to mid-career income levels. People who've strategically switched jobs to increase compensation. The key insight is that this isn't rich people territory. You don't need to be making $200,000 or have inherited wealth. You need to be making decent middle-class to upper-middle-class income and be willing to live below your means rather than at the edge of your means. And here's what's encouraging. Income tends to grow during the exact time frame you're investing. You might start at 30, making $75,000 and struggling to hit $1,618 monthly. But by 35, you're making $95,000 and it's much easier. By 40, you're at $110,000 and you're exceeding the target. The investment timeline and the income growth timeline align. I started trying to hit this number when my income was about $82,000 and it required serious discipline. By the time I was 3 years in and making $98,000, the same discipline was much easier. The target didn't change, but my capacity to hit it increased with career progression. The income principle, $1,618 monthly, requires earning in roughly the top third of households. But that's achievable through career development and dual incomes for a large percentage of the population. It's stretch territory, not fantasy territory. The lifestyle design required. Let's be real about what it takes to consistently invest $1,618 monthly on a $90,000 income, because this is where theory meets reality and most people fail. At $90,000 gross, your take-home after taxes is probably around $67,000, or about $5,600 monthly. You're trying to invest $1,618 of that, leaving you $3,982 for everything else. Housing, food, transportation, insurance, everything. This means you absolutely cannot afford the luxury apartment that eats 35 to 40% of your income, the $600 car payment on a vehicle you don't need, constant restaurants, bars, and delivery services, every subscription service and premium version of everything, keeping up with friends who aren't building wealth. You need a lifestyle that looks something like housing at 25% of take-home or less, $1,400 max, probably with roommates or in a less trendy area. A paid-off or cheap, reliable car, $0 to $200 monthly if financing something modest. Cooking most meals, strategic grocery shopping, $400 to $500. Minimal subscriptions, basic phone plan, no premium everything, $150 to $200. Careful entertainment budget, free activities, intentional spending, $300 to $400. This isn't poverty. It's intentionally modest living with the explicit goal of becoming a millionaire in 20 years. It's the trade-off. Live like a typical middle-class person now, or live like a millionaire later. And here's what most people miss. This lifestyle isn't forever. It's for the accumulation phase, typically 15 to 20 years. Once you hit millionaire status, once compound growth is doing heavy lifting, you can relax lifestyle restrictions because your financial foundation is solid. I lived with roommates until I was 33, drove a 2006 Honda Civic until age 35, cooked probably 90% of my meals, had maybe 3 subscriptions total, and spent very intentionally on entertainment. My friends thought I was weirdly frugal, but I was investing $1,700 plus monthly, and my net worth was climbing at a rate that was going to fundamentally change my life trajectory. The lifestyle principle. $1,618 monthly requires deliberate lifestyle design that's significantly below what your income could support. It requires saying no to most lifestyle inflation for a sustained period. That's the price of millionaire status. The tax optimization that accelerates the path. Here's where the $1,618 story gets even better. If you're using tax-advantaged accounts correctly, the real cost to your take-home pay is significantly less than $1,618, which makes the goal much more achievable. Let's say you're in the 22% federal tax bracket plus 5% state tax, so 27% total. If you contribute $1,618 monthly to a 401k, you save about $437 in taxes. The real cost to your take-home is only about $1,181. That's huge. You're building wealth at $1,618 monthly, but it only costs you $1,181 in actual take-home pay reduction. The tax savings is basically boosting your investment capacity by 37%. Now, the strategy gets more nuanced depending on your situation. For someone young in a lower tax bracket, Roth contributions might be better. You don't get the upfront deduction, but all that growth to $1 million is completely tax-free forever. For someone in their peak earning years in a high tax bracket, traditional 401k makes more sense. Take the deduction now when your rate is high, pay taxes in retirement when your rate might be lower. For most people, a mix makes sense. Some traditional 401k for the immediate tax benefit, some Roth for the tax-free growth, potentially HSA contributions if you have access to maximize tax advantages. The point is that proper tax optimization can reduce the true cost of investing $1,618 monthly by $300 to $500, making it dramatically more achievable. You're effectively investing $1,618 at a cost closer to $1,100 to $1,300 in actual sacrifice. I maximized 401k contributions first, getting the full tax deduction, then layered in Roth IRA contributions. Between the tax savings and employer match, I was building wealth at about $1,800 monthly, while the real cost to my lifestyle was more like $1,400. The tax code made the millionaire path significantly easier. The tax principle. Use every available tax-advantaged account before investing in taxable accounts. The tax savings and employer matches can effectively reduce your required contribution by 20 to 30%, making $1,618 feel more like $1,200 to $1,300. The compound growth that makes it exponential. Let's talk about what actually happens over those 20 years, because understanding the trajectory is motivating and it explains why persistence matters so much. Year 1 to 3. Slow, grinding progress. You invest about $58,000 over 3 years, your portfolio grows to maybe $65,000 with returns. It feels linear, not exponential. You're wondering if this is even worth it. Year 4 to 7. Things start shifting. You've now invested $136,000, but your portfolio is worth about $170,000. Returns are starting to add meaningful amounts. A good year adds $12,000 to $15,000 just from growth. Year 8 to 12, the snowball is rolling. You've contributed about $233,000, but your portfolio is worth $340,000. Annual returns are now exceeding your annual contributions. The compound growth is finally visible. Year 13 to 17. Exponential becomes obvious. You've put in $330,000, your portfolio is worth $590,000. You're gaining $50,000 to $70,000 in good years. Your money is working harder than you are. Year 18 to 20, the final push to millionaire. You've contributed $388,000, and in these final 3 years, the portfolio surges from about $780,000 to over $1 million. The last $220,000 appears in 3 years from a combination of continued contributions and massive compound growth. This trajectory explains why so many people give up in years 1 to 5. The progress feels too slow. The sacrifice feels too high relative to the visible gains. But the exponential curve is just getting started. The people who persist through the boring middle years are the ones who end up as millionaires. I hit year 7 of my investing journey recently, and I'm right at that inflection point where returns are starting to rival contributions. It took 7 years to get here, but now every year forward is going to feel more and more like the snowball is rolling on its own. That's what persistence buys you. The behavioral discipline that separates success from failure. Here's the hard truth about investing $1,618 monthly for 20 years. The math is easy, but the behavior is incredibly difficult. Most people who start this plan don't finish it, not because they can't afford it, but because they can't maintain the discipline. The behavioral challenges you'll face. Year 3 to 4. Friends are buying houses, new cars, taking expensive vacations. You're still driving your old car and living modestly. The comparison trap is brutal. Most people break here. Year 7 to 10. You hit a market crash. Your portfolio drops 30% in a few months. You watch $100,000 plus evaporate. Every instinct tells you to stop contributing or sell. Most people who made it past years 3 to 4 break here. Year 12 to 15. You've been disciplined for over a decade. You're tired of living below your means. You want to finally enjoy some of your income. You start rationalizing lifestyle increases. This is where even committed people often slow down. Year 16 to 20. You're so close to millionaire that any deviation feels stupid. But unexpected life events, medical issues, family needs, job changes can still derail you. The final stretch requires maintaining discipline when life inevitably gets complicated. The people who actually make it to millionaire through the $1,618 method have several things in common. They automated everything so contributions happened regardless of how they felt. They treated investing as non-negotiable, like rent or mortgage, a bill that must be paid. They had a compelling why that motivated them through the hard years. Retirement security, family legacy, freedom, whatever. They stayed invested through market crashes, trusting the long-term trend. They resisted lifestyle inflation even as income grew, channeling growth into increased investing. I'm not going to pretend the behavioral side is easy. There have been months where I resented the discipline, where I wanted to skip contributions and spend on something fun, where maintaining the plan felt like sacrifice without reward. But the commitment to the 20-year plan has kept me consistent when motivation alone would have failed. The behavioral principle: have a system, not just a goal. Automate contributions. Build accountability. Develop a compelling reason to persist. Expect the discipline to be harder than the math and prepare for that reality. The life after millionaire status. Let's talk about what actually changes when you cross 7 figures, because I think understanding the outcome makes the sacrifice feel worthwhile. Being a millionaire at 50 or 55 doesn't mean you can stop working and live lavishly. $1 million generating 4% annually is $40,000 in income, which isn't exactly luxury living. But it means something more important: options and security. You can take career risks you couldn't before. You can leave a job you hate without panic. You can negotiate from a position of strength. You can pursue passion projects or start businesses because failure won't devastate you. You can help family members who need support. You can retire early if you choose, or work for meaning rather than money. The $1 million is a foundation that everything else builds from. And if you keep the discipline that got you there, that million becomes 2 million in another 10 to 12 years, even without additional contributions. The compound growth doesn't stop, it accelerates. Moreover, you've spent 20 years developing the financial discipline and habits that created the million. Those habits don't disappear. You're now someone who knows how to build wealth, who understands delayed gratification, who makes strategic financial decisions. That's worth more than the million itself. I know people who reached millionaire status in their early 50s through exactly this method. None of them stopped working immediately, but all of them made different choices. Took dream jobs that paid less, retired 5 years earlier than planned, started businesses they'd been thinking about for years, traveled for extended periods knowing they had the security to come back to. The $1 million bought freedom to design life rather than just survive it. starting today, not tomorrow. Look, here's the reality. Whether $1,618 monthly is achievable for you right now depends on your specific income and situation. Maybe you can only do $1,000 right now. Maybe you can do $1,200. Maybe you're already at $2,000. The specific number matters less than the principle. There is a direct, calculable path from your monthly investment amount to millionaire status, and understanding that path gives you a target to work toward. If you can't hit $1,618 today, build a plan to get there. Start with $800. Get a raise, increase to $1,200. Switch jobs, hit $1,618. Each increase accelerates your timeline. If you can exceed $1,618, do it. Every additional dollar compounds over 20 years into dramatically more wealth. But whatever your starting point, start today. Not next month, not when you get the next raise, not when life settles down. Today. Because every month you delay is a month of compound growth you permanently lose. The $1,618 monthly path to millionaire isn't about perfection. It's about consistency, discipline, and trusting the mathematics of compound growth over time. And the people who actually reach millionaire status aren't the ones who had perfect circumstances. They're the ones who started and didn't stop, who maintained the discipline through the boring middle years, who trusted the process even when progress felt slow. Your path to seven figures is clearer than you think. It's $1,618 monthly for 20 years. The only question is whether you'll actually do it.